A great amount of creativity lies in the making of a print, with its endless subtle variations which are yet all tied to the original concept represented by the negative. I have often said that the negative is similar to a musician's score, and the print to the performance of that score. The negative comes to life only when performed as a print.
Perhaps music is the most expressive of the arts. However, as a photographer, I believe that creative photography, when practiced in terms of its inherent qualities, may also reveal endless horizons of meaning.
Ansel Adams is one of the most influential figures in photographic history. He dedicated his professional life to environmental conservation, groundbreaking landscape and large format photography, and in sharing his experience and lessons on the full craft of photography, of which he is considered a true master. This culminated with the publishing of a now legendary trio of books, The Camera, The Negative, and The Print. In this video, I am going to revisit the third book in the series, The Print, to find a few lessons that we can still bring to our photography today, and to explore new processes and technology we can implement as we journey to find our own expressive prints. To open the book, Ansel describes two of his guiding principles: the act of visualization and the pursuit of an expressive print. He opens the first chapter saying, "The making of a print is a unique combination of mechanical execution and creative activity. It is mechanical in the sense that the basis of the final work is determined by the content of the negative. However, it would be a serious error to assume that the print is merely a reflection of negative densities in positive form. The print values are not absolutely dictated by the negative, any more than the content of the negative is absolutely determined by the circumstances of subject matter." And he says on the topic of visualization, "I emphasize the importance of practice in visualization, the constant observation of the world around us and awareness of relationships in terms of shape and potential form, value interpretation, and emotional and human significances. All these come together as we develop our ability to visualize, to see as our photographic equipment and materials see." On defining his view of what a fine or expressive print looks like, Ansel relies again on his musical background to give us an example. A fine print has been generally assumed to have a full range of values, clear delineation of form and texture, and a satisfactory print color. But what a catastrophe it would be if all photographs only met these criteria. True, a note of pure white or solid black can serve as a key to other values, and an image that needs these key values will feel weak without them, but there is no reason why they must be included in all images. Any more than a composition for the piano must include the full range of the 88 notes of the keyboard. Marvelous effects are possible within a close and subtle range of values.
Most of the family and the friends would make such statements as, "Ansel, dear, the camera cannot express the human soul. Do not give up the music." And my rejoinder would be, well, I don't think the camera can, but maybe the photographer could try.
He goes on saying, "Once you admit your personal perception or emotional response, the image becomes something more than factual, and you are on the doorstep of an enlarged experience. When you are making a fine print, you are creating as well as recreating. The final image you achieve will, to quote Alfred Stieglitz, reveal what you saw and felt. If it were not for this element of the felt, the term creative photography would have no meaning."
I can't verbalize on the internal meaning of pictures whatsoever. Some of my friends can at very mystical levels, but I prefer to say that if I feel something strongly, I would make a photograph that would be the equivalent of what I saw and felt. When I'm ready to make a photograph, I think I quite obviously see in my mind's eye something that is not literally there in the true meaning of the word. I'm interested in expressing something which is built up from within, rather than just extract it from without. But there I am trying to verbalize, and it never was very successful.
I believe Ansel's insights on visualizing and in what an expressive print can look like are very valuable still to this day in photography. I think we see prints very often as ends to means of presenting the subjects and the photographs that we have taken and crafted, and I feel there are a lot of tools left on the table when it comes to the crafting and presentation of our prints that would help us to rise further into creating a meaningful concept within our imagery and our artwork. With that, I would like to move on into some modern techniques and updates that I would like to add to our conversation in creating our prints. In the second chapter, Ansel goes into detail about darkroom design and equipment. For the most part, all of this information is still very relevant and applicable today. One update I would like to add to is in the section about enlargers and light sources. Since the print was published, and due to the boom of affordable video production, we now have LEDs to add to our arsenal of potential light sources in the darkroom. These LED video lights come in all sorts of sizes and shapes. They have great variability, a lot of brightness, and a lot of color accuracy that we can take advantage of. Using some white acrylic and careful attention to diffusion, it is very simple to modify or even revive some of our enlargers to keep working and maybe even make them better and brighter with these new LED light sources. And here I want to show you some shots of my own modified 4x5 enlarger. Also, RGB lighting has now become very affordable and very powerful. Just a very cheap little light like this. It's rechargeable, you can put a magnet on the back, and it will produce a very bright and very color accurate red light that I have found to be very safe and very useful in the darkroom to add some more lighting and give me some more lighting options. In Chapter 4, Ansel goes into darkroom printing papers as well as other materials like developers, and here is where I found a little bit of a disconnect and maybe kind of an outdated source of information. Ansel, for the most part, used graded papers where there was a fixed contrast level, and these may still be available today, but they are quite rare. For the most part today, we are using variable contrast or multigrade paper based on the Ilford multigrade filtering system to adjust our contrast. And Ansel does go into using these papers a little bit, but I want to offer some new tips and tricks that will help you in starting out and getting closer to your final print a little bit faster using multigrade filter paper. In Chapter 4, Ansel starts talking about work prints, test strips, and a basic print. And what he means by a basic print is essentially getting as close as you can to your final print without using any dodging and burning. So only using global exposures where the entire print is going to be exposed for a certain amount of time at a certain contrast filter or paper grade. I personally believe that this gets a little more complicated when using variable contrast papers, as there is both exposure time as well as contrast filtering to dial in. Now, paper is only getting more and more expensive, so I have become very precious over my paper, and I strive to use kind of the smallest test strips that I can get away with and that will give me the most amount of information. I am also a big fan of the split contrast process when using variable contrast papers and the Ilford multigrade filtering system. This system uses 10 different colored filters ranging from numbers 0 to 5, with 0 being extremely low contrast and 5 being extremely high hard contrast. It is very possible, most of the time, particularly if you have a very nice negative, to just use a general middle of the road filter like 2.53 or 3.5 to complete your initial basic print. However, I have found it very useful to print at, say, 2 different filters, say 2.5 or 2 or 1.5 on the low end, in order to burn in and adjust kind of your highlight densities, and then using a higher filter like filter 4, 4.5, maybe 3.5, to control the density in your shadows and kind of dial in your contrast a little bit more precisely. Now, dialing in a good split filter print does take a little bit more time, and it also takes a little bit more test strips most of the time. So we're going to move into the darkroom, and I'm going to show you a technique to easily understand multiple filters and their effects in combination on just a single test strip. Also, while we're here in the darkroom, I wanted to talk a little bit about viewing our negatives. Ansel talks a lot about this in both the negative book as well as in this book, to look at your negatives and visualize what kind of tonality you can expect from your final prints. Now, this is a skill that I feel most analog photographers will gain with experience, to be able to look at a negative and read what the positive might look like and imagine and visualize what it might look like. But we have some great modern technology that we can use in order to assist us in viewing our negatives and visualizing what our prints can look like. Mainly the use of your smartphone camera to invert and view your negatives as a positive version. You can do this on an iPhone via the accessibility settings, and you can set it as a triple tap on your home button or screen. I believe this also does work on Android or Google or other operating systems. And you can program your phone to simply invert what the camera is seeing. You can then look at your print overall. You can stick your camera on top of a loop in order to closely examine parts of your image. And it's a super handy tool to visualize what your positive print can look like. Also, you can just use your smartphone camera and a light table to take very rudimentary digital scans, and you could process those in an application like Snapseed to then have kind of an idea to work off of. You could reference that digital positive version of your print without having to take the painstaking steps to scan and process, formally and in high quality.
Here, near the Golden Gate, lives Ansel Adams, musician, mountaineer, writer, teacher, photographer.
Okay, welcome to the darkroom. Today I'm just going to make a couple of small prints in order to show you a couple of good test strip techniques that I have found. So let's zoom in on the enlarger a little bit. Okay, so here under the enlarger I have a nice little landscape, and we're going to make a 5x7 print. And the first kind of print that I want to make is just a general single contrast filter straight print at just one time setting. So let's take a look at making a very broad time spectrum test strip so that hopefully we only have to make one. And also on this, I am going to use a filter of 3 just to have a kind of general middle point that should give me some nice contrast. Of course, I'm going to turn off the white light and stop down probably a couple stops just to make sure it is sharp and our light isn't too bright to get a good length of time in our exposure. All right, so let's actually open the lens back up and turn on the white light, and let's take a look at where we are going to be putting our test strip. So I'm going to take my 5x7 paper, and I'm going to cut about 1-inch strips going the short way so that they're not the long way, they're as short as possible. And on this image, I do have the moon over here that I'm kind of interested to see in the test strip. But for this first one, I'm just gonna go right in the middle. And then I am going to change my increments moving vertically like this across the landscape. That way in each strip, I can get a significant new portion of information. Okay, so here is my test strip. I am again just going to place it right here. A trick you can do is you can take your test strip, hold it behind your back so it's away from the light, turn on your light again, and then kind of remember in your mind where that test strip is gonna go. Turn off your light, you could place a finger there, and then place your test strip right there. And I'm gonna lock it down underneath of the easel blades here. Again, I'm going to close down the white light and stop down my lens a couple of stops, and I am at filter 3. And the first thing that I want to do is grab my piece of cardboard, and I'm just going to go across, setting my timer to 2-second intervals. And I'm just going to place my paper down, do a 2-second interval, and then I'm just going to move it down maybe 1/8 of an inch or so. So there we go. Keep on going. Let's take a look. I think that's about it. I'm going to do one final one so that we will now have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, maybe 14 seconds, all comprised on this one strip. Next, I'm going to use a technique to actually make sure that I don't need more time than what I've given this. So I'm going to set my timer to 10 seconds. There we go. And then I'm going to cover up where I know the horizon, mountains, grass, and everything. I'm going to cover that up right here. I might need a little bit more. And it's good to just use cardboard for these kinds of things. So I can cover that up and then cover that up a little bit there. So now I will have a little bit of the grass and a little bit of the sky still in this exposure. And then I'm going to give that an extra 10 seconds. So what this is going to give me with this additional 10 seconds on the top and bottom is, instead of in the middle going 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, I will now be starting from 12 seconds. So this outside portion will show me 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, for example. So now we can know that we shouldn't hopefully need more time than that, but in theory we could make an even smaller section at the very top and bottom and do another 10 seconds there. So there would be starting from 22 seconds and upward. So you can do that as a method to show a lot more time on your test strips. So let's develop this up and we'll take a look at it. All right, so here is our test strip fresh out of the wash. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 times. And then on the bottom and top, we will have our 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, and so on. So let me actually turn off the overhead lights. And I'm seeing clouds here. So there's gonna be a little bit more density there. And I want this moon to be very bright white. So I'm going to go off of this. I'm going to expose for 12 seconds and make a full print. All right, so here is that print, and I'm pretty happy with it. So this is good for, I would say, a single filter, single amount of time image as a base print to start working off of. But let's look at a split contrast version of this same image. And let's also make a fast version of a test strip for a split contrast filter technique on this image. Okay, so for our split filtering technique here, I am going to choose the filters of 4 and 1.5. 1.5 being our low contrast, and 4 being our high contrast. So how I want to actually do this is I want to kind of make a Venn diagram of filtering going on. So I'm going to expose the bottom section here, like the bottom 2/3 up above the sky. I'm going to expose that at our filter 4, and then I am going to do the opposite, and I'm going to do the top 2/3, including all the way down here at our filter 1.5. What we're going to end up with is a little section at the top and the bottom that is just filter 1.5 and just filter 4. And then in the middle, we are going to have the combinations of both of those. I'm just gonna get a couple very small little pieces of tape here because we really don't want it to move. Next, let's take our test strip and we're going to cover that bottom third that we want to save for our filter. And then I am also going to tape down this as well. Now what we're going to do is the exact same. We are going to do our 2-second test strips all the way across. Again, I'm doing really small increments here, like 1/8 of an inch. I find I am able to read and understand that. All right, and let's do one more for our 2 seconds at the beginning. Next, I'm going to pick up and move my little cover sheet here so that now, and I'm going to tape it back down. So now I will switch the filter to 4. There we go. And now we will expose for the bottom. And one more. And now let's develop that up. So now deciphering this test strip is a little bit more complex. Up at the top, we are going to have our filter 1.5. And then down here at the bottom, we are going to have our filter 4. And then in the middle here, we have the combination. Now we could look at 246 in this area. That would be about half and half. 6 seconds at filter 4 and 6 seconds at filter 1.5. So I think what I'm going to do is 2, 4, 5 seconds at filter 4, and then 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 seconds at filter 1.5. So yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. 5 seconds at filter 4, 10 seconds at 1.5. All right, so let's take a look at our split filter print. I'm really liking the sky here. The definition on the moon is so much greater in this than in the single filter. I will say we're getting a little bit dark here in some of these areas. I'm really happy with the sky. And at this point, you know, we could lower maybe that 1.5 time or lower the 4 time, but at this point, I would be more than happy to start working on my fine print. All it would take is just a little bit of dodging on just the 1.5 filter section to start to brighten up that area, still allowing that filter 4 section to burn in that shadow detail that we maybe want to retain around here. So I'm quite happy with this. I hope that helps, and I will see you later. I hope this was helpful, and I'm going to conclude here with just a couple more quotes. Of course, this just scratches the surface on this book and this series. I highly recommend you read these books if you want to deepen your connection to the craft of your photography. And I hope to keep looking deeper into this series to find more techniques that we can learn from and update our collective knowledge and our passion for analog photography. And I'm going to close out with one more quote from the book and a final clip of Ansel. I can only urge you to approach the process with patience and an open mind. Perhaps you will now appreciate why I consider the making of a print a subtle and sometimes difficult performance of the negative.
I think that it's been a great experience to watch photography progress and to watch all the young people coming into the field. And I don't think I have anything to say except I would like to consider that my photography and photography in general is really just beginning. After all, photography was presented to the world in about 1839, 1840, and that's 140 years. That's not very long for an art form.